Tihei mauri ora. Tihei mauri ora kia tātou, ko tatu mai nei tēnei rā. I runga I te reo karanga o tēnei o ngā Wānanga, te Wānanga o Raukawa. Me tō tātou whare, te whare oranga, e mihi atu nei kia koutou ai tēnei rā. Nau mai, hara mai, hoki mai. Hoki mai ki tēnei te Wānanga whakamutunga mo tēnei kaupapa. Warm welcome to you all. Great to see all of you in the house here today, as well as those online, as we have our final speaker of this Lunchtime Lecture Series. I'd like to acknowledge the first 3 week speakers, the first being the Art Rongoa Collective, Whaia Hemaima Wiremu, Pania Solomon, and Charlene Mawate Davis. The second week we heard from Dr. Rangi Baker, and on our last week, the third week, we heard from Pounamu Skelton. A special welcome to those online. This is the first hybrid lunchtime lecture series that we have run, and so we thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining. Please stick with us. Please add any comments in the chat and ask any questions, and we'll endeavour to have some answers to those at the end. Should we go to put them up on the screen? I might just ask Lydia to bring our online audience onto the screen, and as she does that, I'd just like to get a show of hands from you all if you have attended one of these prior to today. All right. And to the online audience, just like to ask if you have attended one of these before, if this is your first. Hands up if you've been here before. Oh, kapai. Hands up if you are joining us from Ōtaki. Our guiding kaupapa for this lunchtime lecture series is Kaitiakitanga, and the kaupapa for this year, the topic and theme is Maramataka Māori. I'd just like to cover off a few housekeeping matters before I ask that we introduce our speaker for today. Firstly, in case of emergencies, exit through one of the 3 doors, and we'll file out onto the grass area in front of the building called Ōtaki, which is a big grassy area just to the north. Please turn your phones to off or to flight mode. Please respect our speaker by holding your questions until the end. There'll be 10 or 15 minutes at the conclusion of this kōrero for us to take questions and have those answered. Please refrain from recording this session. Our session is being recorded, and that'll be available online once it's been vetted by the Kai Kōrero and edited for editing purposes. At the end, with our question and answer sessions, please use a mic. Lots of people think that they have a nice strong voice, but so that our online audience can hear and so that everyone in the room can hear, please wait for the ushers to bring a mic to you, and we'll use the mics. Wharepaku, for those that need to use them, are out the side or out the rear door and down to the rear of this building. And at the conclusion of this kōrero, around the 1 o'clock mark, we'll be inviting everyone for kai on the northern side here in Te Kete Kete Uru Uru Tau. Nō reira, tēnei mātou mihi atu ana ki a koutou, ka tono atu rā ahau ki tō tātou tumuaki, mana tō tātou kai kōrero. E whakapuaki, kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Weno ki te maringa nui, ka riro māku tō tātou kai kōrero o te rangina e kōrero e whakataki. E rangi tēnā ku. Nau mai hara mai hoki mai ki tēnei, ki te Wānanga o Raukawa o tira, ki tēnei Wānanga oi. Nau mai ki te kaupapa, o te wiki tētahi kaupapa e mohi o pai ana koe. Nau mai ki te hunga, taiohi mai, pakeke mai, kaumātua mai, ko hara mai ki rongo i o kōrero. Ko rangi tēnei. He tangata I tupu mai I te rohe nei, I tai toko. Huri no Muaūpoko, o tātou whanaunga tato o Muaūpoko o Tūhoe anō hoki. Koe te tehi, ko roa nei, e tautoko ana i ngā tini mahi o te Wānanga Raukawa. Wai hoki koe te tehi o ngā kai karakia i te wā i tūwhiratia ngā purapura, i ngā tau te kau ki muri, ke mohi o koe rangi, ngā tau mai anō i taua wā. Nā reira, ahakoa e hiara ngā tono, ka kaha koe ki te manaaki. Me pehera te mihi ki tērā whakaro nui o me te mohi o i ngā mano tono, ka whakawhawhia ki a koe, ia te rangi kāre a kore. Hoi anō, kāre e nei haramai ki te whakarongo ki a. E haramai rātou ki te whakarongo ki a koe me tō tātou hariko katoa. E riti ana mātou, mā koe e whakapai nei, e riti ana mātou tātou, kia nuku ki tētahi taumata ki atu. I roto i o tātou mōhiotanga ki te taiao, o tātou tiahitanga i te taiao, i o tātou whakarite i o tātou ao, e hāngai puai ki te ao o waho, te ngā aorangi ki te taiao anō hoki. Nā reira, he awhina anō i nei kōrero, ia mātou ka wānanga tono i te pēhea, me pēhea te ao anga atu nei. Nā reira, nau mai haramai hoki mai i rangi, tēnā rā koe.
Kai te timuaki, mere ana, tēnā koe ngā kupu whakatau, i ahau o tira i tā tātou kaupapa nei tātou tō mai ki tō tātou whare i tēnei rā. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi, nōku te honore nui te hoki mai ki konei ki tō tātou whare, ki tō tātou wānanga. Ahako te nui o ngā tono, I te wā i tai mai te kōrero mō tēnei, enei kauhau nei, i rongo au, i te tā kirikiritanga o te ngākau kia hoki mai ki te mahi tēnei mahi, ki te manaaki i te kaupapa i whakaritea nei e te wānanga. Nō reira tēnā koe o tira kōrua e hoa pātaka tino mōhio ahau, ki ngā mahi, kei te mahi anei e koutou, me te tīma, ki te whakarangatira i ngā kōrero, ao tātou mātua tīpuna o tira, o te hunga o nāe nei ki te taiao. Nō reira, e kore a rika taku mihi e hoa. O tira kia tātou, kia ora tātou. Okay, I can see that minutes clicking away there. Often, most people know me as being from Tūhoe, and that's how I get introduced. But I am from this region. I'm born and bred, raised and live in. In fact, I'm the only one on my whānau that doesn't live there. I don't know whether they kicked me out or I escaped. I'm still trying to determine whether that, but I was raised here in the 70s and the 80s and into the 90s, played rāhui in rugby when I was young, played whiti te rā in rugby league when I was older, went to Hotopaora with half of Ōtaki, and it's always good to come home. Ki ngā maunga e tū maina, ki ngā waiwhakai ko te rohe nei to the place where I tapahi ai taku pito. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi. So I'm just going to get directly into this, and it's an absolute honour to come and talk to you about, just want to say, if you can just repeat after me, marama, marama, maramataka, maramataka. It's just a macro and makes a massive difference. There's no such thing as a maramataka. It's a maramataka. Marama moon. Marama light to understand. Te tūmanako kei te marama koutou ki te marama. That's just some of the basics, and hopefully you're just going to have a look at some of the elements around the astronomical bodies, in particular their relationship to time. I really want to talk about the notion of decolonizing time and how that enables us to really rekindle our environmental relationships we have with our atua Māori. There's a saying up there, ko tātai arorangi hei kai arataki te rā. It really saying the astronomical bodies determine what we do day to day. Hei kai arataki te rā. Every day is determined by the astronomical bodies. And it was just a way of life that our ancestors chose as they observed the world around them and the changing environment. What we've done is we have shifted our culture out of a astronomically environmentally time-driven system to a Gregorian system of time that has no association or connection to where we live or how our culture was formed. Our entire cultural practice and our language evolves out of our environment. And when you no longer have that connection, your practice and your culture actually change significantly so. Even down to speaking te reo Māori, where so much of the way we think and the things we say in a modern context are couched in our modern practice and our association to our modern environment and our understanding of time. I'm just going to touch on some of that as we go through this presentation. Sorry. I'm not too sure what slide's up next. Try now. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is Te Whānau Marama. Te Whānau Marama are the family of light. This is these two beings here, Tango up the top and Wainui next to him. These are the children that come from the second union of Rangi and Papa. So my people believe that there were a number of unions between Rangi and Papa. The first was the Tūtutu Kaurewa, who produced the pantheon of gods, or the major gods that we understand, Tāne, Rongo, Tāwhiri, those major gods. And then in the second union is Te Whānau Marama. They had these two beings, Tango and Wainui. Tango, po Tango is the darkness and is actually the embodiment of the black space that you see between the stars. When you look into the night sky, that is Tango. And his wife, Wainui, who is embodied in all forms of water. She is not the deity of water, she is actually water. So bodies of rivers, lakes, ocean is Wainui. And these two beings came together, Tango and Wainui, and they had Te Whānau Marama, or the children of light, the sun, te rā, the marama, the moon, ngā whetū, stars, hinatore. Hinatore is a phosphorus light. It is also the traditional way to say that you've had an epiphany or you understand. So kua hinatore. There's so much more Māori than saying kua taka te kapa. Or as my grandfather would say to me, kua muranga raiti. So hinatore means for a light in the end of a cave. Pari koikoi is a dark gloomy light, and hine Raukawa is a very small, fine, dexterous female star who became one of the wives of Tāne, and they had hine te iwa, and that is the origins of weaving the form and the function between Tāne and hine Raukawa. These children were situated in the first ever house. Its name was Hui Te Rangiora. And then they were taken on board Te Waka o Tamarereti, which is still visible in the tail of Scorpius, by Tāne into the heavens. Tāne asked Tango and Wainui if he could have their children. And they said, like I would, absolutely. Take them, please. And they loaded them onto a canoe and sped out across the ocean to a place called Te Paiwai o Te Rangi, the water horizon. When they got to that point, they began to ascend into the sky. They got there, they threw the anchor overboard, which is a circumpolar star that is perpetually fixed in the sky. That's the Southern Cross, Mahutonga. And that's a rope that connects down to this canoe, and they hung the stars in the sky. Once they had finished hanging the stars in the sky, they hung the moon, they hung the sun. It's a very quick version of a much longer story of how we get all the astronomical bodies in the night sky. And I just want to kind of shift away a little bit and now start discussing the notion of time. In my mind, time is the biggest colonizer of any people. The timekeeping system that we have today tells us when we should wake up, when we should go to bed, when we should work, when we should rest, when we should pray. I'm not too sure how come we got to go to church on a Sunday and how come that's more sacred than, say, Thursday afternoon from a Māori perspective anyway. But time and the universalization of time has been something that the British Empire expanded out across the globe. Before they did it, the Romans did it, and then the Greeks also did it. But the British Empire, and everywhere they went, they set up a clock. And when they set up a clock, they set up this time, solar time keeping system that's actually set in central London. So it's GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Greenwich is actually the place where the Royal Observatory is in central London, and they set the time internationally across the globe. Now, whether we like it or not, we follow that system of time today. You know, funny, we're about to come into Christmas and then the new year. We follow that new year not because there's anything new about the moon, or not because the stars in a particular position. We follow it because the calendar system says that's when we follow it. The biggest difference about following a solar system of time is that pretty much as humans, we dictate to the environment when we're ready to do stuff. No, we're like, I'm going to go to work from Monday to Friday because that's when I'm going to work. I'm going to go fishing on the weekend because that's when I'm ready to fish, because that's when I get my time off. Right, I'm actually going to plant on Sunday because that's the only free day I've got. Doesn't matter what the environment's telling you what to do. You dictate to the environment. And that, you know, is how we follow our time. So time, you know, it's understood in three major ways, really. We understand time as past, present, and future. Time is a measurement used to sequence events or intervals between events. So we'll say, you know, I was born, for myself, I was born in December 1973. Sorry, so that's a date. And I've gone around the sun 48 and a bit, 48 and a bit time since then. Okay. Now, our ancestors wouldn't have talked like that. They would have said, I whānau mai au, I te puawaitanga mai, o te pohutukawa. I was born in a season when the pohutukawa bloomed. No? I whānau mai au, te hukarere. I was born when there was snow on the ground. Hence, my middle name is Hukarere. No? I whānau mai au, te hokitanga mai, o te pipi wharauroa. I was born in the season when the pipi wharauroa returned. I tapahia taku pito, I te wehenga o te kwekwe a. My pito was 7 when the long-tailed cuckoo upped and left and went back to Tahiti for summer. So we have this notion of time, and we've ingrained into us days, weeks, months, years, birthdays. The word tau never ever meant year. The traditional meaning of that word is season, because we lived from season to season. We've changed that. We've actually taken that year and applied it so we can mihi to everyone and say happy birthday. And those notions of time and what are important were not what our ancestors practiced. Anyway, Maramataka. There's my 30 days. Maramataka is a lunar calendar, but not entirely so. Right? Maramataka, looking at the moon in isolation of everything else, is not what the system of time works on. No, I can go outside and say, whoa, there's a full moon. And people say, good time to plant today. Yeah, not in the middle of winter. Okay. Or, oh, you know, a good time to, the birds will be, you know, really abundant in this season. Again, not in the middle of summer. So Maramataka are not actually lunar calendar systems. They are environmental calendar systems that use the lunar phases as a baseline. Does that make sense? So they are lunar calendars to some extent, but because that was the sign that changed day after day, and it's the one that's most noticeable in terms of its change, you mark your change of your activity, I guess, by the changing phase of the moon. But they're actually not. Maramataka is so much bigger than just the moon. A Maramataka is an environmental calendar system that uses the lunar phases as a baseline. When you're talking about Maramataka, you're talking about the sun, the moon, the stars, the tides, fish, birds, plants, gardening, hunting, all of that is Maramataka. It's just not the moon. Let's say I was tied up in the cave, or I was in the cave and lived there for I don't know how long. And I went outside and I walked out and said, oh, I know that face, that's Tangaroa. But I'd have to look at other markers in the environment to tell me what Tangaroa of what I'm in. So I'd look to the sun, first of all, to tell me what season I'm in. Then I'd look to the stars to tell me what month I'm in. And then I'd look to the moon to tell me what actual day I'm in. And I'm going to get to that system of time to explain it a little bit better. And here we go. So from a Māori point of view, if you are wanting to tell time, there are 3 astronomical bodies that you have to align with in order to tell time. You cannot look at these individually. It's not how the system works. You can go out and say, oh, that's a good moon, you know, but depending upon what season and what month you're in. The first one is sun. The second one is star. And the third one is moon. And you have to look at these in order to determine where you are in your system of time and what you should be doing. We'll go through each of them, and then I'm going to show you some examples of how the system works. So the sun equals season. You'll know that the sun rises and sets in different places every day, right? Slightly different places. Now, this is just a basic fundamental principle that not a lot of people actually know, because we're not using the sun to tell what season we're in. We're actually looking at our iPhones or waiting for the dude on the news to tell us that, oh, today's the first day of summer. And they're usually way out, right? The environment will tell you when it's summer and when it's spring, not Jim Hickey on the news, okay? No disrespect to Jim, does a wonderful job. But the sun changes its rising and setting position slightly every day. It rises when it's rising in the northeast, it is winter. When it's rising in the southeast, it's summer. General rule of thumb, when it's rising directly east, you're either in spring or autumn. And it goes up and down the eastern and western horizon when it rises and when it sets. So it changes its position. Māori saw this. We had this phrase called te takanga o te rā. It's pretty much the same as the solstice, the summer solstice and the winter solstice. So it goes all the way to the north, rises, arcs across the sky, short days, long nights. Then it comes back. What it's doing at the moment, soon it's going to be rising southeast, middle of summer, we're going to have long days and short nights. And Māori stated that that was the sun. Here he is. And he's got 2 wives and he goes between them. He spends 6 months with his winter wife and 6 months with his summer wife. Now, I don't condone this kind of activity, right? I'm just explaining what the sun does. Now, with his winter wife, Hine Takurua, who's a star, you'll see them rise together in the sky. She'll be in the sky. She is the star Sirius, and she has a number of her children that surround her in the sky, and their father is the sun. And the stars, like, they've all got the same first name, Takurua. Takurua Parewai, Takurua Aio, Takurua Kūtau, Takurua Āngana, Takurua Uru, Takurua Muaūpoko Pāpā. There's lots of them. Snow, sleet, frost, permafrost, calm winter mornings. Now, all of these afflictions of the winter are the children of Hine Takurua and Tamanui Te Rā. And so you can tell which one of those stars, when they appear brightly before the sun rises, what your next couple of days of weather are going to be like. So Takurua whare ana. If takurua whare ana is in the sky, you know that it's going to snow in the next couple of days. Takurua parawai. Parawai is frost. When that's in the sky and bright, you know you're going to get a frost, probably that morning and the next morning after. Takurua ayo. You're going to get some calm winter mornings for the next couple of days when they show and appear themselves. So they're up in the sky. Then he spends 6 months with his summer wife, Hine Raumati. Any gardeners in the room? Sure there are. You ever pull up a root crop and they've got those tap roots that hang off the like the kumara and the white ones? That's ngā makawe o Hine Raumati. That's her here. She supplies the nutrients from the soil. Her husband supplies the light from above, ka hapu te whenua, ka puta, ko te kumara, ko te riwai, whatever else you're growing in your garden. They have a number of children. The eldest of their children is, and you all know, Tāne Rore, who is personified in the shimmering heat waves that you'll see on the road. That's the male. He has a sister, Parearohe, personified in the shimmering heat waves that you see on top of trees. Hiko Hiko's another child. That's the reflection of the sun off the bright of the water in the summertime when you go out on your fishing boats. Or if you're like us, we couldn't afford them, so you had to go out to the Otaki estuary and poach out other people's nets in the flounders. But the light would dance off the water. That's Hiko Hiko. And the last one is Hai. Hai is pollen. And that's one of their children. And that's why you get hay fever. My dad jokes get progressively worse as this goes on. So if you can repeat after me, sun equals season. Sun equals season. Right, it's the general marker of what season you're in. The next marker is star. And star equals month or activity. All right. Stars share their names with months. Stars share their names with activities. Stars share their names with flora. Stars share their names with fauna. And, you know, just again, how I told you, the sun rises in different places during the day, well, during the year. Stars rise 4 minutes earlier every day. So if you get up early in the morning before the sun rises and you go out tomorrow morning, you're going to see the star called Whiringa Ārangi in the sky. It's the marker of the month we're in. So we know we're in Whiringa Ārangi because the star comes up and says, yo, here I am. All right. Now the star that's just starting to come up after it, it's just starting to be visible now, and it will appear brighter and higher in the sky, is Haki here. So the next month, December-ish, but it's not in the sky yet. It's not there because the lunar calendar, the lunar, and we'll get to that, the moon is not yet in Whiro, or the new moon. So we haven't started that month yet. So if you go out, you'll see Whiringa Nuku here in the morning. Now, if you go out a month later, early in the morning, Whiringa Ārangi, sorry, will be there. It'll be higher. And another month later, it'll be higher. And it'll be high because they're rising earlier every morning. And you can tell by what stars are in the sky early in the morning, what month you're in. Also tell what activity you should be doing, what is about to bloom, what is about to spawn, what is about to happen in your environment. A couple of months ago, lunar months I'm talking about, Mahuru. Mahuru, that's third month, hang on, Pipiri Hongo Here to fourth month, Mahuru of the Māori year. Pretty much the start of spring. I saw Mahuru come up in the morning sky. So, well, there's Mahuru. Right below Mahuru, there's a couple of clusters of stars. One is Pipi Wharauroa and one is the Kwekweā, the shining cuckoo and the long-tailed cuckoo. Both of those birds take off for our winter and they spend their time. The shining cuckoo ends up in New Caledonia, Papua New Guinea, top of Australia, has a holiday there. The long-tailed cuckoo ends up in the islands. Now they come back when those stars appear. So those stars appeared in the morning sky. And I was like, ooh, they're up. It'll be close because we were close to the full moon. They usually land just after the full moon. I was waiting. I got up probably early that morning. I watched those stars rise and was rākau nui, no bird, rākau matohi, no bird, takiro. 2 days after the full moon, first call was, so they landed. Really hard to see, but you can hear them. Now, so that's a tohu, right? That's a tohu for spring, not Jim Hickey telling you, right? We are in the 1st of September, so it's spring, okay? Because that's following a numerical solar calendar driven system of time. This is the environment going, right. All of you will know the song, Pipi Whararoa, Kui, 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 Whiti, Whiti, Ora, Kui e Taiki e. Now that waiata is actually a waiata taken out of a much older moteatea. Kiko, kiko, tirohia, keifea, te tau, and let's talk to that. Pipi whararoa, kui, kui, whiti, whiti, ora. Pipi whararoa comes back, lands, its first call. Kui, kui, whiti, whiti, ora. I've crossed over safely. That's what he's saying. I've crossed over from Australia. Unfortunately, I called in and watched the Blues lose the state of origin. I know, he tau anoa a te rātau, rā noa pōpō. That bird lands and says, kui, kui, whiti, whiti, ora. I've arrived safely. It's called it, or that's personified in that waiata. And you hear it call like that for a couple of days. Then it will stop calling. Then it will come up with this call that's huie, huie taikie, gather together. That's the kumara bird that tells you to plant your kumara. And it will call and it will go. You count them. Cry 6 times, you know that you have time to grow 6 rows of kumara that season. That's as long as your season's going to be for planting kumara. This year, 9. 9 from it's going to be, that's a sign that you're going to have a long, long summer this year. And you actually can probably plant them in stages, right? If you've got 9, you'll plant 3 early, 3 in the middle, 3 towards the end, and then you'll get kumara that'll store longer throughout the season. Mātauranga Māori built around timekeeping systems that attach you back to your environment. That's why star is important, because it actually gives you what you should be doing in that month, and it tells you what month you're in. So repeat after me. Sun equals season. Star equals month or activity. Star equals month or activity. The next one. Can you change that, please? Here we go. So moon equals day. And you say that, moon equals day? Right? So the moon actually tells you what day of the month of the season you should be doing something, right? The sun was in the correct position. I knew we were into the spring around that. The star told me that we were in the correct month and the Pipi Whararoa was coming back, but I had to wait for the moon to be in the right position to be exact on the day that it was happening. So that's how you go sun plus star plus moon. That's season plus event or activity plus actual day. And it's the moon that's constantly changing. I just, while I've got your attention on this, one of the things that we need to stop doing is saying that, asking the question, what lunar phase is it today? Okay, lunar phase and day are complete 2 different things, right? They don't run in sync. And I think because we've been colonized to work off a 24-hour day, we think that the lunar phase that we're in at the moment, tangaro whakapau, started at midnight and will go through to midnight, right? The moon rose at 3 o'clock this morning. That's when Tangaroa rose. And it will be that lunar phase until about 10 to 4 tomorrow morning, when it will become Tangaroa Whāri ki Kiokio. So you've actually got to know the position of the sun in relation to the moon to understand what phase you're in. We're caught up in trying to make this lunar calendar system fit into a Western calendar. Doesn't work. It's like putting diesel in your petrol truck. And they work off two different driving systems. And it's empirical science. Probably going to upset some of you with this next comment. Kei te pai. He kai tēnei mā te hine ngaro. Wānanga hia tēnei. Kei a koutou te tikanga. Whakahe mai, hei ha māku. Whakaai mai, ka pai. So you agree, you couldn't agree. Maramataka, we're not driven by your emotions or your energy levels. Okay, that wasn't the purpose of these systems. They were about division of time and division of labor. You go into all of the early manuscripts, it's about when to plant, when to hunt, when to fish. That's what drives Maramataka. That's what they were about. It's a very, very small element of the Maramataka is actually about spirituality or how you're feeling. And I think that we've actually flipped the Maramataka in a more modern sense to be all about your emotions. Now, don't blame the moon because you're in a bad mood. Kei te pai te marama, ko koe te take. Yeah. People say, oh, you know, my kids are playing up, what's the lunar phase? Kei te pai ngā tamariki, kei te pai te marama, ko koe te take, and we've flipped it. And it's because we've shifted into a real neoliberal, new age spiritual kind of approach to what the moon is. And that's because we're not practicing. Hey, we're not gardening, we're not fishing, we're not hunting, we're not doing those things, we're not involved in the environment. So we've shifted its meaning to be all about spiritual levels and high energies. And we're actually forgetting the fact that a lot of this is empirical science. This is a scientifically driven system of time. And I'm a little bit worried. I've been calling it, and please forgive this, but I've been calling it lately the horoscope of the Maramataka. No disrespect to Hori down the road making his kako. He's the man. But what's happened is it's all become about, you know, if you go outside on Whiro, oh, bad things will happen. Okay, you're not going to die if you go outside on Whiro, right? The Maramataka is often a rule of thumb built around our ecology, right? Like to say, you know, don't mow your lawns in the rain. It's not as if you can't, it's just going to be harder. And that's kind of what the Maramataka is. It's being aware of the environment and what's happening and the markers that are happening. We've flipped that in a real modern sense to it all to be about, you know, I've seen posts today, your lucky color is green, according to the Maramataka, and the number you should be thinking about is 12. Okay? That is not how our ancestors applied that. Tirohia, kei roto i ngā ingoa, kei roto i ngā tuhituinga. It's built around division of time and division of labor. And when we allow other people to grow our food, when we allow other people to determine what we eat, when we no longer go outside and connect to our environment, our culture shifts, and we've shifted it into this new age space. And anyway, moon equals day. So I put these three things together. There's me. I'm looking, probably not the best image, but because of the light, but I'll show you how this works. So I'm looking northeast. This is overlooking Ngarua Wāhia. Climbed up on top of this hill. It was hard. I'm looking directly northeast. There is the sun rising there. So I know I'm in the middle of winter. That's the correct season for me to be up there at that moment. So that's sun, right? Sun equals season. So I'm in the right season. Then I look to these two stars here, that's pipiri. Pipiri are the stars that mark the first month of the Māori year. So star equals season or month or activity. So I know I'm in the right month. So I'm like, yep, I'm in the right season of the right month. Then I look at that, and that's the Tangaro lunar phase. So I know I'm in the right season of the right month of the right day. And I know that's the exact time that I should be looking towards Matariki to tell me what my year is going to be like. Does that make sense? That is how you combine sun plus star plus moon to tell time. And I know when I see those markers like that, apart from Matariki, I know it's going to be cold. All right? I know that I'll be giving like 1,000 Matariki kōrero. I know that the kereru is fat. One of the stars that is on the end of tautoru there's tautoru. That's matatoki, ngāwhata, and tautoru. And these ones down the bottom are te tuke, te hao o rua, and that top one on the handle is miro miro. Really bright that year. You can see miro miro popping out, right? I know when it's like that, that the miro berries on the trees will be really fat. So I know that the kereru will be really fat and fat on miro. And that's when they were harvested. I've always wondered what they taste like. The other thing I know that will be in the environment will be the piharau or the korohoro. They come back at the season, come up the rivers and spawn. And so I can tell, and all of these, the kereru, the miro miro, the piharau, the kōrero about hine takurua and their children, the cold, all of those are stars, markers of month or activity that you align with the correct lunar phase and the sun, and that's how you get your time. There's another example. That's looking over a garden, a kumara garden. This is before the sun rises in March, Poutu Te Rangi. There's Poutu Te Rangi. So that star's up in the sky telling me that, oh, that's the Hulk. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, there are 3 stars that appear in the sky early in the morning. Poutu Te Rangi, they were on that picture up there. One is Whānui, who is the deity of the kumara, and the other one is a Panitinaku. They create this triangle or this kumara that appears in the morning sky. And when I see that kumara appear in the morning sky before the sun rises, I know it's the time to harvest my kumara. So again, it's using those 3 markers, the sun telling me I'm in the correct season, the star giving me the correct month and activity, and then I triangulate that with the moon, and it tells me when I should be going out to harvest. Sorry, did I do something there? No. It's not my fault. Hoi anō. I'm kind of glad we got to the end of that, because I do want to give some really, I think, important messages. I think they're important anyway. There are a couple of key elements that we need to consider as a people moving forward. And I think for a place like Te Wānanga, this is vitally and absolutely important. There are a couple of things that are coming through that we will need to consider, not just in terms of education and knowledge, but actually in terms of our well-being and survival. One is the environment, and the other one is Mātauranga Māori. For us as a people, we need to reconnect to our environment. Kind of tired of people asking me, what's the lunar phase today? You want to know what the lunar phase is? Go outside, look up into the sky, okay? We have this disconnect between knowledge and practice that never ever existed with our ancestors. They practiced alongside knowledge. These things go hand in hand. But when you make knowledge void of practice, we are in a very, very dangerous space of isolating our knowledge to being something to be studied as opposed to it to being lived. Massive difference between studying a culture and living a culture. And when you study a culture, you may as well put it in a museum. Because all you do is, oh, we did this and we did that. You have to, what are we doing now? You have to live a culture. You know, same as a language. Now, if you study the language to study it and don't speak it, then it's a waste of time. You might as well just put it in the museum. Go down to Te Papa and listen to people talking te reo Māori. You have to practice it. Aiwe. So there's that triangle called te Mātauranga, te kumara a Mātauranga. And when it rises like that, I know I'm in the perfect situation to harvest my kumara. I want you to try and imagine this, because we all completely know the system. I remember when you remember play school? The shorthand is pointing straight up. So it's something o'clock. Grew up on that stuff, right? I want you to imagine it like this now. I want you to think of the shorthand as being the sun, and it goes across the 12 months of the year, and it actually the slowing moving hand on the clock, but it takes us from summer into autumn, into winter, into spring. That's what it does. It goes around like that. And it's the indicator of season. The long hand is a star, and they rise differently, and it takes us through the different months and through the different activities that we should be doing, like the hours. And the shorthand, or the second hand, is actually the lunar phases, and that's clicking constantly, tick, 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 right across the year. And that's actually telling us the second of the minute of the hour we should be doing something. It's telling us the day of the month of the season that we should be doing something. All right, I've got 4 minutes before I'm going to open it up for questions, and I'm just going to leave you in these 4 minutes with these two things. If you are going to talk about the months of the year, right? And you are talking about June, use hune. Don't use pipiri. Hune and June, that's just the kupumino, the borrowed word. They're the same thing. That's a solar month. These things over here are lunar months. They don't match. What we're trying to do is we're trying to slam our beautiful lunar months over the top of these solar months. And we say June is pipiri. And like today is the 15th of pipiri. There's no such thing as the 15th of pipiri. 15th of June, 15th of hune, te kaumarimo hune. But there is no 15th of a lunar month. You have lunar phase of lunar month. Right? So today we are te kaumāwaru or noima, the 18th of November. Or right at this moment, we are tangaro whakapau or whiringarangi. So we're lunar phase of lunar month. Do not use these things to describe this, right? Not the same. Now, I know many of you are going, oh, but that's how Te Taurewhiri does. Te Taurewhiri's wrong. Not too sure how many star people they got in there. 2 different systems of time. Pipiri this year started in June and ended in July. It was July, right? But we're trying to bastardize our lunar months so they can fit into a Western system of time. Stop doing it, right? Today is Te Kaumāwaru or Noima. If you're going to talk about November, it's Noima. If you're going to talk about whiringarangi, talk about whiringarangi. Don't mix the two up. Ka pai? Next one is the same with the days. Oh my God. Rā hina, rā tū, rā apa, rā pare. Take all of those and throw them in the ocean. Okay? They, and I'll explain why, they've only been around since about 1996. So people are saying these are the more traditional ways. And I know there might be some teachers in the room going, oh my God, all my students know that. Okay? Monday there. Monday. That's what our tipuna did because it made sense. We don't have a traditional day of the week. We have lunar phase. But Monday. And then in the 1990s, it was Te Taurewhiri. Loved them because they do an awesome job. But they said, oh, well, let's make them more Māori. And I understand the desire in that era to Māorify things. But the system that they followed, Monday, they said, oh, yeah, Monday's like, where does it come from? It's actually Babylonian. It means moon day. It's connected to the moon. They said, well, hina is a word for the moon, so it became Rā hina. And I said, oh, well, we're off to a good start. Where's Tuesday from? Well, it's actually the Norse god of war, Zeus, which come out of the Roman god Mars, who was the god of war. And they said, well, Tu's the Māori god of war, so let's call it Rā Tū. And in fact, let's rename Mars, even though it had a traditional Māori name, let's rename it to Mātauranga, even though it has no association to war. In some places, it's now called Tū Mātauranga since 1996. So you can see what's happening is we're trying to describe the days of the week using a Western methodology and slamming our Māori terms over the top of them. I'm saying to you now, mena kai te hi koutou te noho ki te Maramataka Pākehā, me ngā kōrero mo ngā rā o te wiki, me ngā marama o te tau e ai ki te Pākehā. You stay in tūrei, wenarei, taite, praere, hune, hūrai, ākuhata, because they make sense. If you're going to talk about a Māori system of time, you talk about lunar phase of lunar month. Kaua e whakawhenumi I nei me rua kei tuki tuki. So if you try and weave them together, they won't work. And some of you might be thinking, oh my God, what are you saying? Just going to quickly zap through some of these slides. We've put together some resources, me and my sisters. Actually, it was mostly me and my older sister. I think my younger sister's online. Just showing the stars that mark the month and some of the creatures that they're aligned to. And this is a 3-year calendar system that's called Te Tautoru Nui o Matariki, because it works off every 3 years, there's an additional 13th month in the lunar calendar system. I'm not going to go into that. But these are some of the resources that we've been bringing out, like waiata, so you can actually sing yourself into your lunar months. Some of the kids might know the Te tahi o pipiri, te rua o takurua, te toru here o pi. These are actually star he ringa ringa whakaine whetū. Now, I didn't create these. They came out of a manuscript from the 1800s, written of actual hand action that measure the rising points of stars, along with hand actions that measure the lunar phases. So at the moment, we are tangaroa whakapau o te ono o whitia no o whiringānuku. So there's hand actions that measure lunar phases, lunar months. It's got some pretty pictures. Okay, I'm opening it up for you now to ask any questions you have. I hope that wasn't too boring. Kia ora. Mena he pātai a koutou, pātai mai.
Kia ora.
These microphones, eh? If you've got a question, put your hand up. I think there's some. Yeah. Oh, ana. Kia ora.
So I just wanted to ask about climate change and its impact on lunar solar systems. And I talked to this woman, it was a couple of years ago now, from Tūhoe, who was running the the trekking through the forest, and also talk to some people in Waikato who look after big tracts of land with native birds. And they talked about both of them talked about the bird and berry being out of sync, bird and berry cycles being out of sync. Can you just explain a little bit how this system can get out of sync?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the traditional signs that are showing are no longer there. It'll be a number of reasons. Sometimes, like for one, there's a star in the sky, Muaūpoko. Muaūpoko was a whiting fish. It was very numerous right across the country. Completely extinct now. I think the 1900s was the last time, 1919, I think was the last time it was caught. The star still rising, showing that it should be coming back. It's no longer there. So there are a lot of those types of things, like it's showing this is the time that the berry should be fruiting, and it's not, and it's fruiting twice a year, autumn and spring as opposed to winter. So it is changing, and that's one of the beautiful things about being Māori and about being Indigenous. We are flexible as, right? And our systems, we have to, and I don't necessarily agree with the idea of climate change. I believe we're having an impact on the climate. I don't believe that's happening. But we shouldn't be addressing climate change. We need to address people change. Climate change is like, it's the climate's fault. And who are we to say, yeah, let's drop the temperature of the globe? It's like, oh my God. Māori, we adjust to the climate. It's the same idea as like there's bad weather and there's good weather. Not from a Māori perspective, there's weather, right? When it rains, it's meant to rain. When it's sunny, it's meant to be sunny, right? So there's this idea that we have this ability to like stop the climate from changing. We need to stop polluting. We need to be more sustainable. But we actually live, when our ancestors came here from Polynesia, they came to a place where they saw and enacted with things that were not even known where they came from. So they just adjusted this system of time to fit into the new climate they came to. And as it continues to change, we need to adapt to it, and our markers will change. So their names will have to change. The application will have to change. Some of them still very much working, but no, you're right. Some of them have completely gone out of sync. It's alarming, but we just have to adjust to it. But yeah, I'm just, I hear climate change a lot, and I totally agree that we're having a negative impact. But again, we're trying to put the blame on the climate, through that kind of phrase. I think it's a people change we need to focus on. Paito pātai.
We have an online pātai here from Kelly. Where do you recommend learning more about the Maramataka to confirm our understanding and practice, especially when there is no one in your family that practices or lives away from your ancestral whenua?
Pai te pātai. I was going to say Te Wānanga Raukawa. The new paper that you're going to be teaching next year, Pātaka, and your course. It's coming as there's been an explosion, but it's bigger than Maramataka. It's probably a much bigger program around astronomy. There needs to be a study and papers and probably a whare kōkorangi, or an astronomical space. That because there's so much language and practice, and like the whole Matariki ceremony that many of you would have seen maybe on television with the Matariki launch this year, that all comes out of a similar kind of knowledge base. It's on the same point. So there are some really good practitioners at the moment. The person I think who is the absolute lead in lunar calendar in the country, and someone that I have the utmost respect for, is Reriata Mākiha. If you ever get a chance to talk to Reriata, he's a practitioner who actually goes out and his work is phenomenal. A really gentle, kind, giving man he's the mantis when it comes to moon. His knowledge in that space is far superior to mine. There's the navigators, the likes of Jack Thatcher, Hoturo Kerr, Peter Smith. There's people working in the gardens like Kelly Marie, Liliana Clark. There's quite a few people out there, and I'd really encourage people to follow them. But there are things that are on the horizon, PLD programs, training programs, and still got to get this whare kōkōrangi up, hopefully by next year sometime.
Pātai anō ki roto i te rūma? Ana.
Taku pātai nei, ki te whakaaro etahi o mātou kura rānei, Wānanga rānei, kia hono tahi ai o tātou whakahaerenga o enei kura. Ki te Maramataka Māori, he hara etahi taupā.
Ka pai.
Kei mua i te aroaro o tātou kura, o tātou wānanga.
Ka pai e hoa. That's a really good question. So what do we do about it? So we have this other system of time that we live for centuries, for generation upon generation. And in the past 150 to 200 years, we're living someone else's system. Hasn't always worked too well for us, right? Don't get me wrong. The Gregorian calendar system is a beautiful system of time, keeping in sync with everyone else around the world. Very clever, right? It's a very clever, good system of time, but it's universal and it's global. It doesn't really suit the needs of the people who are living in particular spaces. And so there is a desire to shift. There have been some schools, and I've had the fortune of working with Te whare kura o Ngāti Rongomai in Rotorua, who have completely changed their curriculum to fit in with a Māori calendar system. They don't have their big holidays in the middle of summer when the environment's telling you to work. They have it in the middle of winter when everything shuts down in the environment and you're meant to stay home and get fat and eat heaps and rest. You're actually meant to click out for a good 2 to 3 months. It's good for your well-being and your mental health. You're meant to step away from stuff. You're not meant to go to a sports game or go out and get the flu. And then when the environment starts to pick up, you get into spring and those birds come back in and go, garden, garden, garden. You're meant to get out there, get back into your environment and you work. And the lean season, when you're meant to be lean and most active, is the middle of summer. There's not a lot of kai. Now we've flipped that on its head and we're having strawberries and pavlovas. That's when you're meant to eat out of your storage houses. And that's what our ancestors did, and they ate a lot of the preserved food, good for you. We call it probiotics now. Our tipuna called it whakamara, dried shark and all of that stuff. You're meant to eat, it's good for you. And then you get into the harvest season, and that's the only time you're really, really eating produce that's really, really fresh, and then you're storing it, you're working, and that's when you go through your assessment phase towards the end of the harvest as you're getting into winter, because no one wants to sit in an exam room in the middle of summer. And so they've completely flipped their calendar year on its head. Their holidays, they actually had to get the Ministry of Ed to change their pay system so it aligns with and they've had massive benefits from that. Noticed that they do stuff like they do their sporting events or their actual practical around the different elements of the moon in particular times, and their theory when the moon is in different phases, and it's worked remarkably well for them. So I think there is a push for a much larger discussion, and I know they had it at the teachers' Wānanga hui. I think, Moko, you went up to that, eh? You were up at that in Rotorua, and they talked about that, and there are kura that are into it. It's bigger than kura though. I think organizations need to think about the way they structure themselves around the optimal times to do things. It's like today, really good this morning. I think towards this afternoon and evening, things are going to drop off rapidly just because of the situation of the moon. Sometimes it's better to do stuff at the nighttime as opposed to the daytime. You can actually put your theory in some areas of the moon as opposed to your practice, and understanding, your regional differences. But yeah, there needs to be a much bigger discussion. I think it's actually coming. I think Māori are and not just Māori, but people across the board are ready for it. It's just sometimes, I think some of the, I was going to say the bureaucracy. No, it probably is. Probably needs to catch up, but society's starting to shift where people are more aware of the environment and the connection people have to the environment. So I think it's coming, Ihoa. But maybe getting in contact with the likes of Tuki Curtis and those people who have done it, that'll be a really good start.
Tēnā koe Rangi, tēnei te mihi ki a koe. He pātai tāku, I have this question. When I was growing up, we used to have the string games. You know, remember the string games? And I remember my papa used to point them out to the stars. And I always wondered what that was about. And you described something today about the kumara, when the kumara was ready, like the diamond. And I asked my papa, what was the meaning of that? And you're right, my papa would plant, like he'd point to the, the string up to the Maramataka to ngā whetū, and that's when he would know it was time to harvest and the time to plant. And I wonder whether anybody's done that, done any research on the string games that we had, because they weren't just games. I think our tūpuna were telling us that it was all about the Maramataka.
Kia ora. Mahi whai. So those here, the string games. Well, a lot of those patterns in those games, those string games, and I'm not too sure, some of you might not be aware, but that's just the string games where you're able to make different patterns. I put up te wako tamarereti. Te wako tamarereti's in those string patterns. I'm not very good at it. My fat sausage fingers always kind of drop the string at the wrong time, but there are some absolute experts at it. They make the planets like Kōpū, Parearo, some of those major constellations. So yeah, that you're right. They did use those as a map that they could actually learn the patterns off. And the hand, because the whai is old. Same of those hand actions where you can actually, measure the stars that are rising with your hands as well as the lunar phases. I just probably, as we're coming to the end, I hope we're coming to the end. We are coming to the end. I just wanted to say that we should not underestimate just how extensive this knowledge base was, and in many places still is. The knowledge base of our ancestors and the way that they had their intimate connection and understanding of the environment and the cosmos was exceptional. You don't traverse the greatest expanse of ocean on the planet without knowing your stuff, right? They are scientists. My record, I have just under 1,000 Māori star names and 103 constellations, right? Western astronomy has 88. We have 103 because they change depending upon what season you're in. All of that, that one kōrero I gave you about that bird, every single constellation has kōrero like that. Just the detail of connection, of understanding of the cosmos. We really need to, in our modern world, up our game. Hey, we need to up our game. We need to reconnect to that space. And it's really our kids. I think there'll be a time when those ones sitting at the back of the classroom will be able to switch and run dual systems of time, know where they were in the Western world and what's happening in the marketplace, and how much the yen has increased against the greenback. And they'll also know exactly where they are in their lunar calendar system and where they should go out and get pipi for the Wānanga that's coming up in the weekend. That's the goal. But we need to up our game when it comes to Mātauranga Māori and push it to the front. We have these people saying that Mātauranga Māori isn't science. Tōhamiti. My ancestors and our ancestors have been scientists from day dot. We are scientists. But I think it's been colonized out of us to believe, no, science didn't arrive until Einstein turned up with a theory of relativity. Oh, we have always been scientists. And I think we should celebrate that. And so that's all we have, eh? just want to thank you for coming along and listening. I hope that was interesting. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou. Kia ora tātou.
Tēnā koe kei te pāpā, e rangi. I o kōrero kua tukuna mai nei ki a mātou, o te Wānanga o Raukawa, o te rā ki ngā kura, kua haere mai nei tēnei rā. Te kura kaupapa Māori o te rito, te kura tuatahi o taki, te kura o whakatukuranga rua mano. Tēnei mātou e mihi atu ana. Koutou tahi ko tō whānau, ko hara mai nei te āwhina, te tautoko i a koe. E mihi atu ana. Te mihi haro hoki o kōrero, ko horai nei tēnei rā. Reira tēnei te mihi aki raki a koe.
E te mātanga nei rā te mihi o te tuku i hotanga e kua hina tore.
While Tammy's up here, I'll just get her to announce our prize winners.
Tēnā tātou. Just quickly for our online winners, we've had 3 people who have said that they've totaled with this kaupapa from the beginning and been at all four of our lunchtime lecture series. So a huge mihi to those of you online who that is. And our winner online is Miriama Buchanan. Jane will get your information details from you. And then our lovely Irina got the name of one person that's in space, gosh. So that's also been to all 4 of our lunchtime lecture series. And so that's Karen, you have your prize for that, which includes a book from Rangi Matamua. So we'll bring that over to you at the end.
Tēnei no te mihi atu ki a koutou. Thank you all for joining us for these 4 lectures in the past 4 weeks. We hope to be back again next year, 2023, with another series. So for those of you who have registered, we'll be able to stay in touch with you. That is either registration for in-person or online. And we hope to have another series in the middle of next year. For those of you who would like to stay on, we have some kai through into Kete Uru Uru Tau. And before I have a karakia for our kai, just wanted to acknowledge Whaia Charlene. Tēnā koe tō hara mai ki te kōrero I Muara, I ngā wiki I Muara. Special thank you to the Art Rongoa Collective, Mahi Nā Rangi and to Pounamu for coming on and speaking to us earlier in the series. Māku tō tātou karakia e tuku, kia pai ai te kai ki tēnei taha, ana whakapaingia ngā kai e hora ake nei heoranga mō mātou tinana mō mātou wairua no hoki tihei Māori ora. Ara mai tātou.